Okay, so for the record, would you please just state your name?
Do what?
Say your name.
Eric Meyerhoff.
Okay, and Eric, did you grow up in Savannah?
No.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in Germany, and my family left Germany in 1937, and were sponsored by my uncle who lived in Fort Pierce, Florida. And we lived there for a year, and then we moved to Jacksonville, and that's where I grew up, Jacksonville, Florida.
1937, your family was able to escape some very bad things that were happening in Germany, and although it's not necessarily relevant to what we're talking about, was your experience growing up, and I know you were young then, but was your experience escaping the Holocaust, which is what we're talking about, did that set you apart from other young people that you grew up with?
Well, I do recall that in the kindergarten in this small town that we lived in, we all held hands and danced and so forth. And when the first grade started, Hitler some of his edicts came down, and I had to sit in the back of the room. No one could talk to me. They could spit on me and hit me, and the teacher couldn't talk to me, and I couldn't talk to the teacher. She sent an apologetic letter to my parents, but I was, like I say, at 6 years old, you don't know that it's your religion that's in problem. I thought it was my problem, that there's something wrong with me. But that was only that 1 year. Then we moved to a larger German city. My father had the sense to know that things were going to get worse. And he wrote to his brother here in the States, and you had to have, in those days, because of immigration laws, you had to have a sponsor, or else you couldn't get in unless you met the quota. And so that's how it happened. We were in this large city, Kassel, Germany, for a year until May of 1937, and then we took a train to France because the German ports were closed already for Jews, and then we left on a British liner from Le Havre, France, in May of 1937.
I know as a young child this must have seemed like an adventure your family was going on. And again, this is not necessarily relevant to what we're going to be talking about. But do you remember the way it felt to be so young and to go on all of these different modes of transportation to a new life?
Well, that was the fun part, was that we were going somewhere and seeing some new things, so that was it didn't occur to me at age 8 that things were what was going on in the world and so forth, and the trauma. So we just sailed for 7 days, came to New York on the east side, spent a night at Hyatt, and took a 2-day bus ride down to Fort Pierce.
Were your parents scared? Did you understand how they were, their behavior?
Oh, my dad, yeah, well, my dad was one of 10. My mother was the youngest of 7. And so they had, and everyone of the family, 3 of my grandparents were already passed away when I was born. And they all said, oh, it's going to get better. But my dad just had the hard-headedness of saying, no, it's not. And so he kept doing this till we got here. Once we got to Fort Pierce and lived on a chicken farm that my uncle had 6 miles outside of Fort Pierce, we were there for a year, but my dad realized there was no synagogue there, and so we moved to Jacksonville, and that's where I grew up.
Did the rest of your family make it out of Germany?
No. We sponsored 3 of my cousins, and they came over and lived with us at different times. And one of my uncles, my sister's brother, came over, and one of my mother's sisters survived Theresienstadt, and she came over. But the rest did not make it.
How did you end up in Savannah, Georgia?
Okay, in 1947, I went to college at the University of Florida, and my major was going to be electronic engineering. I was very much interested in that from the physics classes I had, and so I spent the first semester doing that. In my room, the dormitory room, one of the 4 people, or 3, well, there were 4 of us, one of the other 3 was a senior in architecture. I'd never heard of that profession before. And I kept watching what he was doing and said to myself, I can do that, I can draw that, because I started drawing when I was 7 years old. And so then I went to the psychology department, where they gave tests as to where you would be happy as a professional. And number 1 was doctor, and I can't stand the sight of blood, so that was out. Number 2 was farmer, and we had lived on a farm in Germany, and I didn't want to do that. Number 3 was engineering, and that was close, but I wasn't too sure about that. So the second semester, I started School of Architecture once I saw what my roommate was doing. And we had these long projects where they would do, and one night we had a project that was due the next day. And I spent the night in the drafting room of the class that we had. And about 6 o'clock that morning, a fella came in, tall fella, and we started talking. And we just hit it off for some reason as we were talking, and became friends. He was a 6'5" Presbyterian Republican. I was a 5'6" Jewish Democrat. And we just were able to hit it off. And to the point, and this was, I'm talking 1947. He passed away in 1995. And in all that time, we never had an argument. We just laughed our way through any problems and talked them out. We could finish each other's sentences. And so we just became fast friends, and we stayed in touch. I graduated half a year ahead of him, and went into the service. He had already been in the service. I'd been deferred because of the Korean War while I was in college. So then I graduated in '52, went into the service shortly thereafter, and was in for 2 years, came out in '54, went down to Miami, where I had some classmate friends to try to find a job. And from there went to Sarasota, then I went to St. Petersburg. All the time, I stayed in touch with Bob Gunn. And then in 1957, we were talking, and he said, "I'm tired of working for other people." And I said, "So am I." So he said, "Well, come on up here and we'll open up a firm." So end of 1957, I came to Savannah.
Let me ask you to backtrack just a little bit, and before we start with architecture and
Okay.
the importance of the work you've done here in Savannah, I want to ask you about 1947, when you were talking about being very different from your work partner, but in 1947, 1948, a lot of other things were happening. Number one, what Hitler had done was becoming clear.
Yes.
The war was over, but Israel was, or Palestine was trying for statehood as the state of
Right.
Israel.
That's right.
Did any of those discussions about that political system, and certainly you might have been more aware of what was going on in Europe because you had so many family that had been left there, so you might have been more interested in the stories coming out, if any of it was coming out. Did you discuss this kinds of stuff with either your Jewish family, your Jewish friends, or your non-Jewish soon-to-be partner?
Discussed it with
Discussed-
everybody, as a matter of fact. Yes, it was very effective as to what was going on, what went on. One of my cousins that we sponsored, that came over and lived with us, was the sole son of my mother's sister and her husband. And he came over, he was 17. He taught me a lot. We were in the same room at the house together. And he went into President Roosevelt went into the Army as an enemy alien because we were still German citizens. And 6 weeks later, he was a master sergeant, and because he spoke 5 languages, and went to Europe as an interpreter, interpreting prisoners. So when the war was over, he took a Jeep and knew where his mother was, drove to Poland where Theresienstadt is, and found out that the Russians had released her, and therefore she was sent back to Holland, where they moved to. And then he drove to Holland and found her, and she came over and she lived with us. And so, I was constantly in touch with what was going on. And interestingly enough, from the first grade on, I was first grade in Mingelinghausen, Germany, second grade in Kassel, Germany, third grade Fort Pierce, fourth grade elementary school in North Jacksonville, fifth grade elementary school in South Jacksonville. And it wasn't until the 6th grade that I saw my classmates the next year. So I was a loner, very much so. And to the point, and here I am at 85, I still have dreams of being chased by Nazis.
When these stories came up, as I'm sure they did,
Yes.
did people believe you when you said this? Did people discount the fact that you were making such a big deal over it, or that it couldn't be so bad? Was there any way that people that you were meeting here could understand what was going on or what had gone on there?
Well, as I just told you, I was kind of a loner. I was kind of scared of people, and I was very much kept to myself. Even when we had company at home, I would run into the bedroom and not be with them. So I didn't mix with a lot of people, and I'm not a blabber where I talk a lot, and consequently, I didn't discuss this much with anybody.
Fair enough.
Only when asked or where I was from, and give you an example that I came home from school when I was in the fourth grade in Jacksonville, and told my mother that all the kids thought I was very smart, but they couldn't pronounce my name. They kept calling me Smart Alec, and that was kind of things was going on. In the third grade in Fort Pierce, when they found out I spoke another language, they asked me to speak another language, and I asked them, they had to give me something to do, so I got yo-yos and things like that when I spoke German to them, and they of course liked that, but everybody was acceptance, and so I felt more and more at home, but I grew up a loner, and if it hadn't been for my partner Bob Gunn, who was very much a personable guy, everybody that he met was his immediate friend, I would be a lot different personality today.
Did you experience anti-Semitism as a young man in business when you were going to start a firm? Did it help that you had a non-Jewish partner?
That helped. I had no anti-Semitic incidents, except one, and we threw the guy out of the office. As a matter of fact, when he made an anti-Semitic remark, and it was my partner that did it. And so, yeah, but we, that was, he, like I say, was a Presbyterian, I was the Democrat, and in 1995, when the January of that year, we hired a local architect, a younger fellow, to be a small partner, and he was Catholic. His name was Pat Shea, and so we were very open-minded. As a matter of fact, we were the first to hire a black African-American draftsman. We were the first to hire a female draftsman. We were the first to hire a Cuban draftsman who somebody brought in our office. And one year, we had a Chinese draftsman that somebody brought to the office, and he didn't speak any English. So we were very open-minded, and also this when I came here in Fort Pierce, in the evenings, when blacks or Indians came towards you on the sidewalk, they got off the sidewalk and had to walk in the street. At 6 o'clock, there were neither African Americans nor Indians to be visible for the rest of the night. I mean, it was that exclusive. Then when I got to Jacksonville, when I got on the bus, I always went to the back of the bus to sit with the African Americans. Sometimes the bus driver wouldn't leave until I moved, and sometimes it was okay, but it was always that. And when I moved to St. Petersburg, I had on my roommate, the fellow I worked with, was a classmate. He was not Jewish, he took me to an exclusive club for lunch every day at the waterfront, which didn't allow Jews. There were signs on the hotels, white Protestants only. And when Bob and I talked, and I was in my car driving to Savannah, I said to myself, what am I doing? Here, I left a town that only wanted white Protestant, and I'm going to Georgia, where the KKK is. And I came up here just scared to death. And what do you know? I got an apartment in the historic district, 1 East Gordon, right across the street from Mikveh Israel. And I went to, for breakfast every morning, I went to Anton's, the restaurant on Broughton Street. And it was filled with Jewish salesmen that owned the stores on Broughton Street that had come from services at the synagogue. And interestingly enough, I met the Jewish community. Also, my partner drove me out to the JEA, which then had moved to Abercorn Street, and just said, okay, go in there and meet people. The interesting thing, my partner grew up with Jewish friends, very close Jewish friends, and immediately here there was anti-Semitism and certainly anti-African American, but it never bothered us. We never were faced with it.
Is there something about the Jewish teachings that you grew up with that prepared you for the fact that all people are equal, or that you should treat people with dignity, or anything like that you were able to base your life on and your perspective because it's something that you were taught?
Well, look, there's no question that having to sit in the back of the room in the first grade because I was Jewish, I never had any animosity towards the African American. As a matter of fact, I felt sorry for them. And that's why I sat in the back of the bus with them, because they were being abused like I was abused. And yes, anything that was anti-Semitic bothered me tremendously, and I steered away from it. I mean, I have incidents that I could talk about that there was a club here, the Oglethorpe Club, which was certainly all non-Jews. But my partner was wanted to be a member, and he asked me whether he should or could because of the situation, and I said yes. So he joined, and then we went. He took me to lunch there, and when the waiter came, I said, "Do you have any matzo ball soup?" And he didn't know what I was talking about, obviously, but we always made a joke about it. One year, in those early years, I was Tamachichi's cousin. You know, every February they celebrated Oglethorpe's Landing with fellow Tamachichi. And that one year I was the Tamachichi's cousin. And a friend of mine made me the loincloth and dressed as an Indian. It was a very cold day in February, and I had no clothes on except that. And so when it was over, the fellow that was Tamachichi said, "Come on, hop in my car. We're going to go down to and warm up." And he took us to the yacht club. And we were there having drinks in the lobby. And in comes, from cleaning his boat, a friend of mine, non-Jewish, and he saw me there. And he said, "Eric, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I couldn't get in as a Jew, so I came as an Indian." And that quote was used with me for a lot of non-Jews, used that for years, that I said that, and everybody remembered it. And when I see the people that were sitting there, every once in a while, they always remind me of that quote. So,
The civil rights era in Savannah
yeah.
was quite amazingly at the forefront of a lot of what was going on.
Yes.
Do you remember any incidents, or did you participate in any way in some of the civil rights movement, or what were you aware of?
Well, I
or
was
do you remember
very-
your synagogue getting involved?
Okay, as I was very aware of it. As a matter of fact, living at 1 East Gordon, the day that Armstrong College had the first African American, I was on the fire escape on Bull Street and saw this when the state police escorted a former mayor to the classroom, which is the law building at the north end of Forsyth Park. So I was there for that. I knew of some of the merchants, non-Jewish, who sat in their display windows of their store along Bull Street, who, with a rifle that night, thinking that there was going to be a riot. So very aware of it, and I personally was always befriended African Americans and tried my best to unify as a little contact that I had. But that's the way it was.
Let's talk architecture.
Okay.
Tell me about Savannah as a place to set up an architectural firm, and tell me about what you and your partners did to enhance our city.
Okay. Well, I've got a list here
Okay.
of the hundreds of projects that we. The year of 1957 to the year of 2000, we had 74 projects in the historic district of either renovation, restoration, or new building. So we were very busy. Our architectural firm, in 57, we and my partner's father, who was a civil engineer with the Corps of Engineers, but he left them and was his own engineer. The three of us rented 2 rooms in the industrial building. I had to wait until my license to practice architecture was transferred from Florida to Georgia. So that didn't happen until a year afterwards, and we couldn't form our firm. But when we could, we did. In the meantime, we did drafting for my partner's father, civil engineer. He did these various projects housing projects and designed the sidewalks, streets, and sewage and so forth. And we did the drafting. And we just waited, hoping somebody would come by and do this. One day, my partner's father, who was 6'7", was called Shorty Gunn, was in his office, and the head of the National Guard of the state of Georgia came in. He knew Shorty Gunn because during the war, Shorty did a lot of work for him, and so they were friends, and he drove down from Atlanta. And he was in a rage, and Shorty said to him, "What's the problem? Why are you so irritable?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you, I drove down here from Atlanta. I have an architectural firm that has been doing work for us, doing armories in various cities, and I went there to the one here in Savannah this morning and asked for a set of plans of one of the armories. And they made it for me and said that I owed them 35 cents for the printing of that. And I'll never use them again." So he says, "Shorty, do you know me a good architect?" And he said, "Well, my son's in the other room, and he's got a partner. You can talk to them." So he came in there, and he said, "Fellas, I've got a project out of Travis Field that I need an architect for. I want to build a group headquarters building, a hangar, and an office building. And it's about $1 million worth of work. And can you guys handle it?" And we said, "Oh, sure, yes." No, he said, "Well, I'll be back in 2 weeks with all the details." And when he left the room, we looked at each other and said, "What in the hell are we going to do next?" I mean, can you imagine in 1950, well, this was 1960, 58, 59, getting a job of $1 million? And that was just amazing. But the first job that we got, one of the first jobs, was interesting story. A fellow came in, we were in the drafting room, and he said, "Hello." I went out to meet him, and he said, I forget his name now. He said, "I'm from Metter, Georgia, and I want to turn my chicken feed office into a bank, and I need me an architect." And I said, "Just a minute, I'll let you speak to my partner." And I went back and I said, "Bob, there's somebody really wants to see you." So he went out, and yes, that's what he wanted to do. So we went to Meta and measured this feed store that he had and drew some preliminary plans and sent them to him. And never heard from him again. And we kept calling him because he hadn't paid us. And he said one day, about 6 months later, he said, "Oh, I done had it. I done did that because I had the plans you guys sent." But those were preliminary drawings, didn't have any dimensions on them or anything. So we decided never to do outside work again in Georgia in small towns. We were mostly a commercial architectural firm. We stayed away from residential architecture. and we did commercial buildings and military work, starting with this Travis Field work. The military work was so good as far as income, because when you sent them a bill, within 2 weeks you got your money. Secondly, you didn't have to write specifications because they had standard specifications, and all you did was cross out those elements that are in the specifications that aren't in the project. Like if it wasn't a brick building, you cut out the brick section and so forth. And so that was good, and that led us into the preservation of Savannah, because you couldn't make much money from the preservation project. And we got interested, and I was very close to Lee Adler. On Sundays, he and I used to walk in the downtown area looking at buildings, and then to the riverfront and looking at the mess that was. And so we got a lot of renovation, restoration buildings that we have.
People who are younger or people who are just moving to Savannah might not understand the reference that you're making to the mess that was downtown Savannah. Would you tell us a little bit about what you saw and what you did to change that through the work that you did?
Well, the most visible thing, obviously, is Savannah is a walking city. The buildings are basically, in the historic district, 3 stories high. They are every 2 blocks in any direction, there's a park, or what we call the squares. And people loved coming here because the scale of the city was personable, that people felt comfortable instead of walking down the street, let's say in New York City, where you're going down a wall, 2 walls of buildings, and consequently that's the most visible factor about Savannah. There are different styles of architecture. Being mostly English immigrants in the Savannah area since Oglethorpe, the last portion of the Renaissance, that section had a lot of architecture that was visible in Savannah. Things like curved stairs, stairways into the building, in front of the building, the windows, center window with the 2 side windows. This is all originated from the last Renaissance period. And so there was an identity of a lot of the projects, whether it's neo-Gothic or that, architectural buildings are named after eras of different architectural periods. And architects are known to copy from one to the other. And whenever you see a building that has certain elements, you say, oh, that's Greco-Roman, and you identify it like that. But and that when we got into the preservation thing, we maintained that. We understood it. We didn't do any new buildings that were so contemporary that they didn't fit.
Why is that important? Why is that important? Why is preservation or keeping within a certain style important? And looking forward now, 20 or 30 years later, how has that helped Savannah
Well,
develop into the city it is now?
For instance, we did the Palmer and Kay building. It's a 6-story building on Johnson Square. That building, we designed it so that it would be virtually in keeping with Savannah. We have the railings of a porch on the second level. We have nothing that calls so much attention to it that it doesn't fit in. And we think that was important in the preservation of Savannah, so that it all blends together, even though you don't have to follow any architectural period like the Georgian period or the neo-Gothic period. And so we didn't copy any period. We made them contemporary, but in a modest style. And we just felt that that was the way it was.
Of all the buildings that you've worked on, is there one that's your favorite?
My favorite project in all my years of practicing architecture is right here. This is the boat at the riverfront. And we did the riverfront, and we got the job in '73. And I got married in the fall of '73, and we went on our honeymoon. And we went to Europe, Copenhagen, Oslo, Amsterdam, and everywhere we went by the water, there was a little boat or something for kids to play. And I said, oh, we're going to do that here when we did the riverfront. So we built that area, and the circle encircled it. And we talked to the city manager, and he said, well, you can't do that because there's too much liability, kids getting hurt, and the cats and running into that sand and doing their thing, and that's nasty. So what we did was I made a drawing of this little tugboat on a piece of paper, gave it to the contractor, and he built it in the warehouse. And the perimeter of the planting areas that we have there, and they're so designed that the entrances are east and west and not towards the river, so the kids couldn't just run out to the river. And then the circle where the sand was going and the boat was going, it looked like it was going to be a fountain, and we left it like that. And 2 weeks before the opening of the river, the grand opening of the riverfront, that boat came from the warehouse. The contractor put it in place and bolted it down, and the sand was put in there. City manager never said another word. And why is this my favorite project? Because it's the only building or anything that I designed that has everybody smiling that goes into it, and the kids enjoy it. And this currently, that tugboat that's there now is the 4th boat since 1975, because the kids just climb and run around it and just wear down the wood and so forth. So this is, to me, my favorite project.
Well, I'm glad it's there because my son used to play in it all the time. As a matter of
Really?
fact, now that you've said it, I might find a way to use that picture and see if I can find a picture of my son playing in the boat
Yeah.
and put it together. That would be kind of neat.
Well, I have pictures of my daughter playing at one, we celebrated one of her birthdays there. And, yeah, so it's fun.
When you look back at how Savannah has changed, what is your proudest moment in terms of your relationship with the leadership in that change?
Well, you see, my partner, who grew up here, in high school, he played basketball. He was 6'5", and he played basketball with John Versakis, who was mayor for several terms here. So we had lunch together, the three of us, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And so we had an open door. In March of 1973, the MPC came out with a plan to make the riverfront a parking area, the entire riverfront, because Broughton Street was the only commercial area in Savannah. There were no malls in that time. And this would make it easier for people that lived in the outskirts to come in and park. When we saw that report, we said we got to go to Johnny. And my partner and I went to see Johnny, and we just, of course, just walked into his office because we were that close. And we said, Johnny, you can't do this. And he said, what are you talking about? And we told him. He said, you know, the riverfront is very unique and it should be pedestrian because the river is very narrow. And when you see a boat coming, you see the personnel on the boat, and sailors, you can wave to them, they wave to you. And it should be pedestrian so that you can see the boat traffic and so forth. So he said, well, I've already hired a firm, Hussey, Gay & Bell, engineering firm, to design the parking area. If you can work it out with them, you can be the architect and do it the way you think it ought to be done. So we went to Hussey, Gay & Bell. As a matter of fact, Gay had worked for us as a draftsman at one time. And so we immediately made a joint venture. They were the engineers, we were the architect. And that was how we got the job. And we designed it, and we had, my partner met on a ski trip up north in the winter of '73, met a landscape architect from Washington, D.C. that did quite a few major projects there. And he came down, and his advice was that something else should happen every 20, 30 feet so that people did not go down a runway or football field like the area in San Francisco is a paved parking thing bigger than a football field, and you get there and you feel lost because of the scale. And doing an outside building is so contrary to what architects normally do. Normally, you deal with an interior space which you try to make larger visually by windows and angles and so forth. And whereas an outdoor space, you try to make it smaller to the scale of the human being so he won't feel like he's in the middle of a football field. So it was a new adventure. Consequently, we came to the conclusion that we would have, at each down ramp, we would have an area for some sort of a monument, a monumental area. We started out having a fixed seating, or kind of a half theater seating, and we decided not to do that. It needed to be more anonymous. And so we based our design on that, having parking, but we lowered the parking so that the chrome, everybody had chrome bumpers in those days, and the chrome bumpers didn't reflect the sunshine. We made the paving dark, red brick and black granite, so that there wouldn't be any reflection. Lowered the cars so that was, and then as you walked along the buildings, you could see the water and the riverfront instead of having to look at the back of automobiles. And a friend of ours called us when it was announced that we were doing it, and she said, "Don't forget us." And we said, "Don't forget you." And then we realized she was in a wheelchair. And consequently, we have got ramps. This was long before they had the ADL rules and regulations. So where there's a set of stairs, there's also a ramp. So we had that. And Captain Sam, who always went to Defusky Island, he had his boat on the west side of the electric plant, and he went there with groceries every week. And he came to us and said, "You know, I'm thinking I can get what do you call them, the boat with the paddle wheel boat, and
Yeah.
start a business with that if you make room for it." So we told him, "Well, you got to get approval from the city." But what we did at the base of where the city hall is, we put power outage, and we put water and so forth, so that, yes, that river paddle boats could dock there. And so that was done. And it was that kind of stuff that
And then years later, you had the space for the World War II monument.
oh, that was
Dedication.
that was a platform, a step brick platform for a monument, and
Just
it was
nailed it
left.
perfectly.
It was
yeah.
left there. When the African Americans wanted to put a monument there, that was one area that they were given, and they said no, because it was the other side of the hotel and nobody could find it. So we renovated the water fountain that we had at the foot of Bull Street and put the monument there. Had nothing to do with the writing that's on there, but I helped the African Americans put that together there, and we changed that, and we had the seating around there, and that's how that came. But then there's the one place at the foot of Drayton Street, the riverboat, foot of Lincoln Street is a wharf that was already there, that brick wall, and we kept that in place. The foot of Abercorn Street is a fountain that the merchant marine women wanted down there, and I had seen a fountain similar to that in California, where you had the water come up in the middle, but you had a cover on it, which would splay the water in 4 directions and run across the stone that's there. And I designed that monument for them, and they're there. And then, you know, now the African American was at the foot of Bull Street, and then we had a monument at the foot of Jefferson Street, and we Whitaker Street, and we just made a platform, a brick step platform. Now, to jump ahead, the veterans went to the city and wanted a place for a monument at the riverfront. And the city said, no, there's no room. Consequently, city manager said, hey, I got an idea, and since all our war monuments are on Bull Street, there's a strip park, 54th and Bull, right near the entrance to Hunterfield, that you can have and design the monument. So the veterans in charge said, okay, and this was a veterans organization, mostly of people that are living in the southern part of town. And so he asked me to get involved with it, and I volunteered to do that, and created the design of it, A World Apart. But then the 2 veterans that were in charge of it both passed away, and this other veterans group came to the city and said, we want to go to the waterfront, and they said, no, we have no room. So we said, well, we can't go out there. They. And then they said, we'll give you Oglethorpe Square. So I had to redesign it to fit into Oglethorpe Square, but the oak trees there are so huge that it reduced the scale of the world globe, and it looked like a little ball, and that was very difficult, and we would have had to cut limbs, oak leaf limbs. Also, Telfair owns Thomas House, and they didn't want another point of interest in that area. So there was a lot of opposition to going into Oglethorpe Square.
But all this time you had that space. Did you remember that you had that space available on Resaca?
No. It was not until there was so much movement that the city manager came to us and said, I've got 3 spaces at the riverfront that you can move the monument. Okay, one was where the Waving Girl is, on the south side of the street. Well, that was too narrow. It's only about 15 to 18 feet. The second one was halfway down, right in front of the all-night bar. And there was a planter there that would become a platform. And we said no. And the third one was at the west end of the Hyatt. And that worked to the point that the scale of the globe could be whatever size we wanted, because of the buildings were of that size. So that's what we picked. Mm-hmm. And it turned out, of course, better than anybody expected at that time.
One last question. Has being Jewish aided or hindered or in any way impacted, let me grab that.
Yeah.
Here, hold that in.
This is.
Let's see if I can, yeah. Hold on. Let me go with those two. Oh, that's very nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it came out better than
Than what you had planned.
anybody expected. So,
Has being Jewish in some way aided or helped you in your career? You know, I was noticing that so many of the early Savannah architects, Eichhorn and Whitcover, they were Jewish. So is there anything about Judaism that pushed you into this field or that helped you connect with architecture, or in any way did one have any impact on the other?
I never had anything anti-Semitic happen to us. We did the African American church, we did the First Baptist church, we did the Lutheran church. As a matter of fact, when we did the Lutheran church out on Mercy Boulevard, where the St. Joseph Hotel is, I walked the existing building with a priest, and he told me that his daughter married a Jewish fellow in Florida, and when we went to services there one Sunday, and they have a period where you greet everybody next to you on both sides of you, and we were there, and this priest comes down to where Bob and I are, and he says, "Shalom, Eric," and so it's never been a negative. It's mostly positive, and but I must say that most of the jobs were handled by my partner because he has a more outgoing personality than I do, and so we had a lot of non-Jewish work. But in 1991, we remodeled the JEA because it had too many entrances, and it could be dangerous and so forth. And of course, the usage had changed. But to tell you the funniest story, this, being from Jacksonville, the Reform congregation in Jacksonville was getting ready to build a new synagogue. So I knew a lot of the people on the board because I grew up with them. And they called me to have an interview. So Bob and I went down there. And of course this was Reform. We were asked to do that in Gainesville, Florida at a conservative synagogue one time. And they waited until they got a minyan, and Bob and I were standing there, and they would count 1, 2, 3. We can count 2, 4, 5, and left Bob standing there, and that was kind of funny. So, but we got that job, and when we did, we built it, and everybody was delighted and satisfied, and we had slides of it. In the late, oh golly, I don't know, I guess it was in the early 90s, my partner and I went to Charleston for an interview of a project, and what we always did, we had a slideshow, and one of us would operate the slide operation, and the other one would do the talking. So it was his turn to do the talking, and I operated the slides. And when we got to the temple, we showed the exterior, and then we showed the interior lobby. The interior lobby had a wall, and if you went to the right, you went to the classrooms. If you went to the left, you went to the synagogue. So that was the second slide that came on. And my partner was there, and he said, behind that wall is a little retail store, and to the right are the classrooms, and to the left is the synagogue. And when he said that, I just went, oh my God. And when we finished, and we did get the job, when it was finished, we were in the car going back to Savannah. And I said, Bob, how could you? I said, the little gift shop is a gift shop. And you said it was a retail store. And he said, oh God, Eric, I'm so sorry. I should have said wholesale. And I want to tell you that that little story was told at his funeral by the Presbyterian minister.
Thank you very much. That was really good.
And that's the kind of relationship Bob and I had.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you think we should have?
Well, I could go on and on, but that's kind of it. But we had fun. That was the main thing. And I feel blessed because I can't think of any body that's been in business for 40 years and never had an argument with their partner. And we just had fun doing it.
I am so glad.